Peace. Uhuru. Amani Naguvu. Welcome to another episode of We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club. I know everybody missed this. I feel like it's been a while since we've been able to get here on Saturday and had this podcast and book club. So I'm really excited about having our discussion today. We're going to continue to look at Stolen Black Labor by Omali Yeshitela in the second half of our podcast and book club. We're going to do our weekly roundup to start it off as usual. And Africa is on the forethought of everybody. Africa is on fire right now. Imperialism is in crisis. And I think right now is a great opportunity to really organize against imperialism. This is in colonialism, it's a great time to be African, man. So I'm Ikemba Ajore, host of We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club, here with my co-hosts. Y'all want to introduce yourselves?
Peace, everyone. I'm Natasha. I am an activist, member of the Northeast Political Prisoners Coalition, Free Them All.
Peace, everyone. This is Frank Mauba, host for the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series.
All right. Again, we charge colonialism. And as I mentioned, this is an exciting time to be an organizer. Political prisoners are coming home. You mentioned freedom all. Indeed, man. So it's definitely an exciting time, and make sure too, y'all subscribe to the channel. We do have a political prisoner podcast that's put out by members of the December 12th movement. So make sure you subscribe.
They're members of the December 12th movement and the Northeast Political Prisoners Coalition.
Okay. All right. And so make sure that you subscribe so that you'll be able to catch those podcasts when they air. So we're going to move into our weekly roundup. Who wants to start? Like I said, Africa's on fire. Everybody has a hot story, but who's going?
Natasha, go first. Go first, Natasha.
Okay. All right. So let me get myself ready real quick to share my screen. All right, so I'm going to share screen. Okay. So my story today is about the title is called Mali Drops French as Official Language. So I'll just run through a little bit of this and then give some of my thoughts. So it says that with its new constitution, Mali has dropped French, which has been the country's official language since 1960. And I'll just read a little bit of this and then I'll scroll down to the bottom. And then according to reports, under the new constitution passed overwhelmingly with 96.91% of the vote in a June 18th referendum, French is no longer the official language. Although French will be the working language, 13 other national languages spoken in the country will receive official language status. So it talks about how Mali has about 70 other local languages spoken in the country. And these are some of the examples like Bambara, Bobo, Dogon, Minikiana, Minyanka, which were already given official language status in the 1980s. And then down here, because this is a little short article, it talks about how the decision by Mali to drop French comes at a time of growing anti-France sentiments across West Africa due to its perceived military and political interference. And so I'll just stop sharing right there because the rest of it just talks about how the military, the current leader, Colonial Assimi, I want to say Guata, is currently in charge. So I wanted to share this story because I think it's definitely a win for Mali. I think anytime any country, any African country, any country that is not a European country that has been colonized, decides to remove the colonizer's language as their official language is a win all the time, because it's just crazy to think that you're operating your country as a sovereign nation. When we think about sovereignty, right, one of the things that the main thing that was fought for, right, the sovereignty encompasses everything. You naming we think about the principle of Kujichagulia, right, the power and ability to name ourselves for ourselves, and be able to speak our own everything. So when we think about naming ourselves and running our own countries and being sovereign, it's key that when we're doing those things, we're doing it in the language that is ours. So it did mention that French is still a working language, and I think that they, just as they have made it no longer their official language, that is probably on the way to making it not its working language. And I think every African country needs to be doing this, and figuring out ways to make it so that, okay, if we're going to stay within these colonial borders that were created, how are we going to then make it so that, we're sovereign, in that all of the different groups of people within the country are able to work together and use a language and also incorporate other languages. This story also made me think about how in China, the official language is Mandarin, but then there's like hundreds of local other languages that are spoken too. So sometimes you'll meet someone from China and they'll speak Mandarin, but they'll speak maybe 2 or 3 other languages. Just like when you may meet someone from Ghana or from Mali, and they might speak 4 different languages from 4 different regions within that country. So making sure that, if you choose one language, it's an African language, and then there's other ways that you can speak the other ones. And also even thinking about like a country like Hawaii, which is still fighting for its sovereignty from the US, is still under neocolonialism, and how they have the same kind of thing about language. So I think it's really important, and I think this shows us that this idea that in Africa, we aren't thinking beyond colonialism, or thinking beyond just holding on to the legacy of colonialism. This shows that there's a movement, like Akima was saying, right? People are beginning to really push off these colonial era legacies that have been left over, and so I think it's great. It's amazing.
Yeah, appreciate you bringing this story. I mean, as you speak, I'm in a space right now in Brooklyn preparing for Kiswahili classes. We're going to be giving Kiswahili classes to the people in the area in New York, but also it's hybrid. So there's people who are joining this class on the continent of Africa. I just like saying on the continent, but just for some people who may not know, but we know is on the continent. And people throughout the United States, Europe, who are going to be a part of this class, and that even shows the internationalism of the language of Kiswahili, that's bringing people on different continents together to learn this language and communicate in the African tongue, right? But to your point too, this is part of the decolonization process, right? To not only, I think, get an African tongue, but begin to think through the lens of African people, through our ancestors, which is very important. What happens is the person who's able to exert or impose their will and power over other groups of people, that group of people who are colonized or oppressed have to adopt the culture and able to survive of the person who is imposing their will on them. And so that's what happens with language. So the language you speak, it reflects the domination of a particular group. And so once we begin to speak, our native tongue, our indigenous tongue, our African language, and begin to exert power and impose our will, on the groups who have been exploiting and oppressing us. In order for them to survive, they are going to have to learn our language. They're going to have to adopt our culture. So that's going to be a indication of power when the colonizer begins to adopt our culture, our way of life, and not just learning it to try to infiltrate it, but in order for them to survive, you're going to have to talk this language. We're not speaking in English, right? So yeah, Frank, if you wanted to ask something, go right ahead.
Yeah, in adding to that, that is what again, Nkrumah talked about when Nkrumah said, when he talked about neo-colonialism and he talked about imperialism, and he said we have to be aware of them. We have to be alert so that we will know how to, fight it to get rid of them, because it is the last stage. And when you read our book, you will get to understand what Nkrumah was talking about. And we applaud the Malian authority. I don't want to say junta. They are the government. Okay, so I'm not going to be using Western narrative to say the junta government. No, they are the authority in charge. They are the government in charge to liberate Mali, Guinea, Niger, Chad, and the entire African continent. Now, that approach by the Malian authority is very great because, first of all, one of the reasons why on the African continent we find it difficult to unite, even though we have been crying about unity, we have been talking about unity, but one of the reasons why it's very difficult for us to unite is this Western language barrier that we use on the African continent, where other people using speaking German, other people speaking French, other people speaking English, those things, other people speaking Portuguese. It really becomes difficult, right, for us to unite, because for each time we meet, we have to have an interpreter. Meanwhile, in Europe, when they meet, no interpreter. Okay, in Asia, when they meet, no interpreter. All right, other places when they meet, no interpreter. Only in Africa, we have interpreter. If someone comes to speak in English, they have to have interpreter in French, in Portuguese, in German. That none of our language. All right. But meanwhile, on the other hand, in America and the rest of the other continent, they don't have interpreter that will interpret it in African, how they call it, language. All right. In African spoken language. No, but we use the colonizer language to communicate to our people. Now, if we don't have an identity, it becomes very difficult to unite. Why are we uniting for? We have to have a common identity, and that will enable us to unite. All right. In Asia, they have a common identity, and one of that common identity is the language. They have no language barrier. It's easier for them to unite because they see each other as one. In America, they have one common identity, and that common identity, number one, is the English. They all communicate in a language that they understand, so they feel part of that society. In Europe, they have one common identity, and it's their language. So they have that one common identity. They feel part of that identity. But in Africa, we don't feel part of Africa. If you speak English, you feel that you are English. You are part of America or Great Britain. If you speak German, you don't feel that you are African. You feel that you are German and you form part of, how they call it, Germany, and you are just a German colony, and so forth. And that's how in Africa it is very difficult for us to unite, okay, when we're talking about unity. And that is why exactly going on again on the African continent, example like what just happened, all right, in Niger, all right. Now, the Western narrative, where some of the African so-called journalists and the so-called ECOWAS, okay, are rely on Western narrative to talk about the going invade Niger. They're going to use military tactics to go invade Niger. First of all, America said Niger had a democratic government. What was about that government? What is democracy? And that's why we've been asking the United States, you are so hypocrite, go and sit in farm place. You remove a democratic elected government in Haiti, and then you want to talk about Niger had a democratic government. You remove a democratic government in DRC Congo. And then you want to come and talk about democratic government. You remove a stable government. You kill a stable government in Libya. Today, Libya is in chaos. Then you want to talk about democratic government. You want to talk about good government in African nations. Okay, I mean, so America should go and find place and sit down. Europe should go and find place and sit down. And to the ECOWAS, the decision you have made with almost a 90-year-old Nigerian. And sorry to say, Nigeria, you are the superpower. But sometimes you add that you are not West Africa superpower. Sometimes you add that you are not West Africa big brother. You add that. Sometimes you add to the extent that we lose hope. All right? Tinubu, who got in power with a disputed, how they call it, a presidency that he got. Because that presidency have to be disputed. All right? You got in power by a means of fraudulent activities. All right? That people don't even trust you. And then you want to come and add that NATO. Because if you say you want to invade Niger, you want to carry coup, you want to carry war in Niger, what are you going to carry war for? Because it was a citizen themselves. Aren't you seeing the citizen on the street saying they don't want American military in Niger? They don't want American bases. They don't want foreign bases in Niger. Are you not seeing it? They are saying they don't want the French in Niger. The French should leave. Are you not seeing it? And then you're talking about democracy because America said it was a democracy. If it was a democracy, why the people went to remove him? Because not only the army, but the citizens. Were you not seeing? Did you not see the people stoning the French embassy? I mean, how can a country, okay, serving in the war to produce uranium, but second in the world when it comes to poverty? How can that be? Is that democracy? You are number 7 on the chart in the world when it comes to uranium, but you are the second in the world when it comes to poverty. Is that democracy? Where are the resources going? To Europe, to America, to France? Okay, the biggest entity in France, the Arriva, okay, get their product or their resources from Niger. And then you say that is democracy. The people don't have role. Okay. When you talk about electricity, all right, the uranium in Niger provide electricity for France for 24/7. But in Niger, the people die in darkness. They want in darkness. They sleep in darkness. And you call that democracy? Is that democracy? America should go find place and sit down. Because this time of Africa, we are in a new trend. You cannot focus or back. You cannot turn or back. And in fact, coup d'etat going to keep going on in Africa until we can get the right people. We don't need some kind of 80, 90 years old people in power who don't understand. Look at the people in France. I mean, the people in Mali, young people. Okay, the people in Guinea, young people. The people in Niger, young people. Are you not getting the messages? Even in DRC Congo right now, they are saying that in fact, UN should get out because UN been in our area since in the 40s. They are saying UN should get out. It was not the army, it was the citizens themselves are saying UN should get out. So Nigeria, we respect you. You are Africa, West Africa superpower. Maintain our West Africa superpower. We do not need any colonial agenda in Africa. Africa needs to be free, and the resources of Africa need to be in Africa. If you want to share with anybody, let it be in finished product and let people come and buy it. Then our resources going to Europe and America. America is not saying they want peace in Niger because America love the Nigerian or America love African. No, if they love African, they got almost 4 bases. America base is there. France base is there. Okay, in fact, America spent millions of dollars to build drum in Niger, but yet they stay. Okay, you have terrorists in that area. Why you have all these bases there? Why you building drum in an area? You spend millions of dollars, you build drum, but yet they stay terrorists, still killing people, terrorizing people, and you are there. You have the German army there, the German base. I mean, French base. I mean, how many bases you got? The Canadian base. How many bases you gonna have in Africa in that one Niger when how they call it, terrorists are terrorizing the people, okay, killing the people, putting fear in the people. In fact, these people got the modern weapon. How are they getting it? So America should find play and sit down. This time around, in fact, ECOWAS, don't try it, because if you try it, you're going to kill African. And if you want to see African die for the interest of America, for the interest of Europe, carry army there. Go and try to invade, or you want to fight those people, because you are going to kill African. Instead of you preserving African life, you are going to kill African. So Nigeria, don't try it. If you try it, it's going to be war. And that war is going to be in favor of Europe, of America.
Hey, Frank is cooking. Tomorrow, Frank is going to be talking about. Oh, that's an echo. Frank is going to be doing a podcast on tomorrow on Niger. That's why he's on fire right now. He's been prepping. Appreciate that analysis, and definitely tune in tomorrow at 2 o'clock.
Yeah, it's going to be 2. Usually it's 1, but because I'm going to be rushing from somewhere, so I just push it to 2 because I don't want to be rushing.
Yeah, 2 o'clock to continue this discussion. I'm trying to think if I can join you tomorrow. I got a couple of meetings. I'm going to try to jump on, man, and add on if I can at some point. I know you're going to be going for like 3 or 4 hours, so I might be able to pop in on that. Really quick, I'm going to do my story, but I'm not going to talk long about it. Malema is in hot water. I don't know why. I don't know why, but so the song "Kill the Boy" song had about 90,000 people who were singing along with them. Hold on, let me pull this story up again. Like and share, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. All right, let me. Here we go. All right. So I'm not going to go through the whole story, but there was some backlash when Julius Malema, he chanted the "Kill the Boy" song. Had about 90,000 people who were in agreement and was singing the song, and they the backlash was because they said Julius Malema was calling on the genocide of Boyer people. And when you go to Julius Malema, he doubles down on why they were singing the song. I just want to pull that up really quick because this is what the man said, right? So whatever the media is going to portray Julius Malema as somebody who's calling on the genocide of Boyers, of this white settler group of people in Africa. This is what Malema says. Malema denounced claims suggesting the controversial "Kill the Boyer, Kill the Farmer" song promotes genocide and racism. We have always stated that the Boyers and the farmers do not refer to individuals, but refer to a system of oppression. I said in court that we used to refer to the police as Boyers. He claimed that the public outrage was sponsored by the DA, which he said needs to make terms with the Equality Court's ruling over the song. So I'm stopped sharing the screen. So that was out the man's mouth right there. This is a song that goes back decades during the period of apartheid. And we can argue that there's still economic apartheid still happening in occupied Azania. So I think the call for the death of people who are upholding a system of oppression, I think is fake outrage when you have this system of oppression and exploitation that's causing the death of millions of African people around the world. Millions of African people around the world are dying are living in poverty as a result of this system, this colonial system that has been set up by people like the Boyers, right? So I think we have to go back to the lessons that was taught by Malcolm X when he says, don't struggle within the ground rules of the one that you're struggling against, right? Because they're going to tell you, oh, you can't say things a certain way, or you can't respond to your oppression and exploitation in a particular way. And it's important for the people who are victims of colonialism and imperialism to define our existence and to define phenomena. And as Julius Malema just stated, what the song meant, right? So forget what the colonizer is saying. If these people like Elon Musk, you know, they're this concern or this fear of a genocide, right, that may happen in the future, is not even happening. You hear them speak out against that, but they don't speak out against the starvation, the hunger, the millions that are dying from hunger and starvation, the millions that are living in poverty and squalor as a result of this relationship, historical relationship that they have with these European colonizers. So, you know, I unite with Malema and the message and what it stands for, not the genocide, but the death of a system of oppression and exploitation and those who uphold it. So, you know, I'm gonna open it up to y'all if y'all want to add anything.
I think also, like you were saying, right, this idea that the oppressor gets to be the one who tells you how you must speak, how you must articulate yourself, how you must respond. And also the idea that I think all of the time when we have leaders or people or even groups who are talking about, you know, taking down the systems of oppression that are oppressing African people, they're always made to be these, you know, these demon people who are calling for genocide or are calling for killing of people, and demonized in that way where, you know, violence, you know, and the idea of violence in that kind of way becomes this thing that is, you know, put on, like Frantz Fanon was saying, that, you know, that is put on, you know, those who are colonized or those who are oppressed, to then make them seem to be the ones who are the violent ones, the killing ones, the ones who commit genocide, where when the reality is those colonizers are the violent ones. They're the ones, like, as you were saying, Akimba, who have been committing mass genocides and who continue to commit violence among against the people who are still being oppressed. Like, we know that within South Africa, you have the majority of those white people, those Europeans who came into, those are European settlers. They're not African people. They are European settlers who are still there. Just that we wouldn't call Europeans who have come to who you know, the European settlers who colonized the Americas. We wouldn't call them you know, indigenous people. We wouldn't call them, you know, the names, you know, people who are originally from Turtle Island. No, we recognize that these are our settlers, and that, you know, they need to give the land back, and that, you know, they're occupying areas and places that they should not be occupying, that they, you know, got through nefarious means and through violent means. So I think, you know, one, this idea that anytime that we're speaking or anytime that we know we're calling for, like you were saying, the destruction of oppressive systems, where these, you know, terrible violent people, whereas, you know, America and Europe and France and in the West, they have a monopoly on violence. They're allowed to be violent. They're allowed to go and kill leaders of other countries, like we were talking about Gaddafi, or you talk about you know, removing other, or you even talk about, like, you know, CIA, FBI, whether they're killing, you know, the Panthers here, or other indigenous groups that were, you know, fighting for freedom, whether you're talking about going into other countries and killing other presidential or legally duly elected people in these countries, they're allowed to go and wage war and drop bombs on civilians in Middle East and all this other stuff. But for some reason, they're not committing genocide. They're not saying violence. They're not saying, oh, we're gonna go and commit a mass. They're just going out and they're just literally doing these things. They're committing these heinous acts of violence, and for some reason they're not the violent ones. They're not the violent ones, but someone who sings a song that's talking about destroying an oppressive system, they're the violent ones, right? And so that's why I think knowing history like you shared is important to know. And like you're saying, hearing it from people's mouths, because the propaganda that is spread to paint us as the violent ones and paint, Europeans and colonizers as the nice ones, even though they're committing heinous acts of violence right in front of you, is really ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, every day, the colonial capitalist system is a violent system. It's inherently violent. It was able to develop and spread throughout the world through violence, brutality, genocide, right? It's a genocidal system. So, I find it interesting that there's this outrage against this song, right? But there's no outrage when it comes to the interests of capitalism, of profit, right? Then there's the conversation of the good outweighs the bad when we look at what has happened historically and what continues to happen. It's all in the name of progress, right? So, F your progress, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we're gonna do what we have to do and say what we have to say to fight against your progress, which is at the expense of African people. Frank, you want to add anything?
Yeah, with this story, it just means that Black people problem everywhere is Black people, issues everywhere, and Black people solution everywhere. Anywhere is Black people solution everywhere. And this again goes to the Bible. Let's go to the Bible. All right. So this how they use the Bible, they interpreted the Bible that fit to their narrative. All right. They took certain part out, they fixed it to their narrative in which they want us to understand. And now let's just go to this group. I know a lot of people have issue with them, the way in which they go about preaching the gospel, right? For me, I don't have problem, okay, because it is exposing the West, okay, the Hebrew Israelites. I don't have problem of them the way because this thing, even when the white man, when the European was bringing the Bible, if you look at history, they used the Bible, okay. They use the Bible to destroy. They use the Bible to kill. They use the Bible to loot. They use the Bible to rape. So throughout history, Europeans have used the Bible to cause chaos. Throughout history, Europeans have never preached the Bible accordingly to how it's supposed to be preached. It has been preached to loot, to kill, to rape, to destroy, and to destabilize. That's how the Bible have been used. Okay, the Bible have been misinformed by European. Okay, now the Hebrew Israelites are now coming out, educating African people, Black people, who they are, even though they may have some differences in how they preach. But for me, I don't have problem. There will always be differences. But the issue here is they are preaching the Bible and making Black people to understand, all right, who the Bible belongs to and who actually the Bible was written for and who wrote the Bible, okay, and who are the people within that Bible. And you can see, all right, just for these people, these folks educating Black people, now you see how Europeans are responding. And I can tell you, very soon, the Bible will soon be changed, okay, because their identity in our Bible, Black people are all over in the Bible, but it have now been taught, even in churches, being preached by Black folks. They don't preach about the identity of Black people, which of course is all over in the Bible. But now the Bible is about to be changed. So those of you who go to church, those of you who believe and in this doctrine, keep the Bible you have right now, because that particular Bible is going to be rewritten. Okay, and they're going to remove, when they rewrite it, they're going to remove every identity of black in there. Okay, and that is to tell you that people say white people wrote the Bible. White people did not write the Bible, because if they did, everywhere there are black identity, they was going to change it. If they change black identity and they make it white, they make the angel white, they make Jesus Christ white. So if they wrote the Bible, why would they put black in the Bible and then they make angel white, they make Jesus Christ white? But in the Bible, they describe Jesus Christ black, they describe angel black, they describe how they call it, disciple black. So if they wrote it, they wouldn't put that in the Bible. They did not write it. They tried to plagiarize it. They tried to change it. Imagine, white folks' education was not in Europe. All of them went to Africa and they learned there. Okay, even the Socrates, they all learned in Africa. All right, all of them, those how they call it, Greek philosopher, they all went down to Africa, to Timbuktu, the Sahel Empire, to Egypt. They all went there. They learned the history, and then they went back to Europe. Then they changed it, and then they say according to Latin, according to Greek, according to Roman. They changed it to all of those things, and they did not say according to. Now, why are we going here? We are going here because of what happened with Judah Malema. Look, for each time there is anything that should be or will be used to unite African, is going to be against the favor, okay, of the European, of the colonizer, of the imperialists. It's going to go against them, and they're going to use that means in every way to make sure it don't work. Now, the issue here is not really about the music. All right, it's not really about the music. Did you see how EFF filled out the stadium? So they have seen, and if you look at Judah Malema messages, he's saying that he's going to become the next president. If he become the next president, okay, he's going to support Putin, okay, to go against imperialists. And who are the imperialists? He said even if it causes him to give arm and ammunition to Putin to fight imperialism, he will do it. Who are those people? Okay, the apartheid, the descendant of the apartheid. And when you really look at it, apartheid is still in Africa, not only in South Africa. Apartheid is going on in DRC Congo. Okay, what happening in Niger is apartheid. What happening in Mali is apartheid. All right, what happening in Guinea is what happening on the African continent is apartheid, because you are depriving the people of their resources. You are depriving the people of what belongs to them. All right, you are depriving the people in every way and improving your economy, your nation, while you are depriving them in their country. Okay, their economy are being stuck. All right, and if they don't agree to you, you put sanction on it. It's apartheid. So if Judah Malema or any African nation sing that song, it resonates to current issue or situation happening on the African continent. If anybody that is against the singing of that song, it just means you are against African people. It just means you are not there to see African people being liberated. It just means you want to see African people in the suffering, in poverty. Okay, you want to see African people being down, being kneed on, being tortured. That's what it means. You want to continue with the narrative, okay, with the legacy of your forefather, because the son did not kill any white people in South Africa. Since they've been singing that song, have they gone on a farm to go kill white people? Have they gone to white people's neighborhood? In fact, it was the same white folks that came to the headquarters of EFF to threaten them. How are you going to do that? EFF did not go to any white headquarters. EFF did not go to any white farm to kill them, to threaten them. But they came for war. And that is why he judged Judah Malema. He said for now, it did not happen. But the next time they try it, what will happen? They will not believe it. We will defend ourselves, and we have the capability to defend ourselves. And we will tell them, going from now on henceforth, we have the capability to defend the African continent, to defend ourselves. No more European interference. No more white person come and tell us what to do, what not to do. Is not going to work. You either work with us, we are not going to work with nobody.
Hey, Frank, we haven't been together for what, like 3 weeks. Frank's been waiting to get back. He came with the energy. That's what I'm talking about. Hey, appreciate that. Make sure y'all tune in tomorrow, 2:00. Frank is going to be on talking about Niger. I can't wait to tune into that. We're going to go into the book reading session. We don't have a lot of time left, but we're going to go right into it. We're reading, and it's in our Google Drive as well. We're reading Stolen Black Labor by Omali Yeshitela. I'm going to put it on the screen. The Google Drive is also in the description for those who want to read along. All right, so I'm going to get right into it. Appreciate everybody for joining, and make sure you like and share. And for those who have not subscribed to the channel, I don't know what you're waiting for. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so we can continue to bring this information to you and yours. So the rise of colonialism, the African domestic colony, 1865 to 1945. This is chapter 3, again, of Stolen Black Labor. After the Civil War and the end of chattel slavery, the form of exploitation of African people was transformed in certain fundamental ways. However, the basic relationship between African people and North American society remained constant. This chapter exposes those similarities and those differences in the course of determining the amount of reparations owed to African people for colonial theft from 1865 to 1945. While a particular type of slavery was overthrown by African people during the Civil War, the exploitation of Black labor in the U.S. was continuous after the war. Slavery had been propping up capitalism for 300 years. It did not just happen for a brief period and then go away, leaving a domestic white capitalist economy. Moreover, the exploitation of African people continued after official slavery was abolished. And in fact, more efficient means of extraction of profits were devised. The wealth which the U.S. had amassed during the period of slavery was used to subdue more and more of the world, putting peoples to work right in their own homelands for the service of the U.S. ruling class. While the capital-intensive sector of the economy, where huge machinery and technical innovations were applied to production, was reserved for the North American proletariat, the white working class, the real origin of the growing profits of capitalism was the ever larger populations of peoples colonized by capitalism and forced to work at ever lower pay. This was the labor-intensive sector of the world economy, whose labor was stolen at the expense of the dissolution and underdevelopment of their economies. The working class of the industrial centers never managed to grasp the importance of the world economy and failed to see beyond their own interests in improving their immediate conditions or power. The left leaders, even the German Marxists who settled in the US, were not one to strong solidarity with the slave resistance, but only gave support to the extent that they could see some advantage to be gained from such support. Marx devised the term, quote unquote, wage slave to dramatize the plight of the industrial proletariat under capitalism. But while the proletarian may be a wage slave, that is, held in a sort of slavery by the wages system, he or she existed side by side with real slavery, slaves in every sense of the word. If Marx was warning of the danger of European workers being reduced to the status of slaves, he was not placing a central emphasis on the actual slavery that existed. With the capitalists in the North raking in huge profits from the slave system and the white working class providing outright hostility, or at best some signs of weak support to the African freedom fight, how did the slave system come to an end? The capitalists did not just decide one day to free the slaves and try out another form of exploitation. That is not how history unfolds. The end of chattel slavery. Let me read this paragraph and then if y'all wanted to chime in. Chattel slavery came to an end in the United States not because of the conflict between a northern capitalist and a southern feudalist class, not because of the moral crusade of white abolitionists, but in the first place because of the very resistance of African people. Not only were there extensive slave rebellions such as Nat Turner's in Virginia, but the South was witnessing successful slave revolutions in the Caribbean and growing lines of communication and subversion between Africans on the islands and the Africans on the U.S. plantation. For a fictionalized account of this very real relation, see the 1850s novel by Martin Delaney Blake. The planters were desperate to provide for their own security, which was one of the main motivations of the Louisiana Purchase. The planters hoped to extend the state power of slaveholders further west in order to close off any nearby frontier to escape and resistance to a frontier for escape and resistance by the slaves. They sought to disperse the African labor force in order to undermine the destiny of the African population and its significance for rebellion, and to weaken the lines of communication and rebellion. All right, so I'm gonna stop there and just open it up. I'll pass it to y'all since I read, give y'all a chance. Did y'all want to point anything out? Anything stood out to you? All right, I'll take the opportunity. Then.
I was gonna say.
Oh, go ahead.
So I mean, a couple things stood out, but I'll start with the last thing that the last line you read that talked about how chattel slavery ended, and when the last line that talked about they sought to disperse the African labor force in order to undermine the density of the African population and its significance for rebellion and to weaken the lines of communication and rebellion. And I think there are like two key things that come to mind. One was just pointing out the fact that chattel slavery is the reason for the end of chattel slavery is not the narrative that has been given, and that is taught in schools when it comes to the North and the South, and abolitionists wanting to end enslavement. No, it was because African people, Black people, fought for their freedom and were rebelling for their freedom, and that there was, and I think also putting it into the international context of other things that were going on, he talks about rebellions in other places, and that's also why when we think about the Louisiana Purchase and the success of the Haitian Revolution, all of those things connect in thinking about how the Europeans saw what was happening and decided okay, well, this system is not going to be able to, we're not going to be able to maintain this system of enslavement because Black people are going to rise and it's going to bring down the whole country. So instead we need to, think about how we're going to make shifts in order for us to maintain. And that's why when we think about this idea of the North and the South and, who wants to keep slavery and who doesn't. And then even after enslavement ends, when we think about this quote unquote Reconstruction, you have, the Northern and Southern politicians making a deal, and I'm forgetting the specific name of the legislation that ends Reconstruction and allows the South to do all of the things that it wants. Because at the end of the day, Europeans understood that they're making moves in order for them to sustain their system of white supremacy, not in order for them to end enslavement. No, that they understood that, African people were going to fight for their freedom and not remain enslaved. And so that when they did fight and win, that would be the end of America. Just like when we think about the success of the Haitian Revolution and how that was spreading in the lines of communication, again, thinking about how even when we're thinking about during the time of, in the 1800s, when we think about the success of the Haitian Revolution, when we think about, leaders of the Haitian Revolution, then going into South America and helping other places go ahead and end enslavement in their countries. And there is no cell phones, there's no internet, but there's a clear line of communication that's happening. The information is getting not just to people in South America, but it's getting to, African people who are enslaved in the Americas. And so them seeing, the importance, Europeans seeing the importance of weakening the lines of communication and rebellion, and then taking that idea and how they saw that and made moves to weaken those lines of communication and bringing it to today. How when we think about the 1970s and the 1960s, how the FBI under COINTELPRO infiltrated so many Black organizations that were fighting for the liberation of African people, spreading false ideas, spreading false information about those who were part of these organizations in order for them to, and then also sending false ideas between groups in order for them to weaken lines of communication. And even today, when we think about the story we were just talking about, how propaganda is still continuously used to weaken lines of communication between African people in the diaspora, on the continent, in order for people not to trust each other, in order for people to look at in order for African people to look at each other as the enemy, or to side with, the West's ideas or views of us, so that we will not unite with ourselves, but unite with them, unite with our own oppressors. And so I think this idea in what he's talking about here, right, that they really sought to disperse, the force, the African labor force that you had, and also part of that was to weaken the lines of communication and rebellion in order for it to not be able to put up a real resistance, right, and to have real unity. But even so, even with all of that, we were still able to fight and overcome, and the system of chattel slavery was ended. But I think when we're thinking about learning the lessons of history, as people who live now, always remembering, how Europeans and the Western colonizers will always use the same tactics because they work. And so if it's not broke, don't fix it. They're going to continuously do it. But we have to learn the lesson to be clear and understand and look out for those times and for those acts of them doing these specific things when it comes to quelling or squashing movements, Pan-African movements against colonialism, so that they're not successful.
No, appreciate that. That was a powerful submission. I'm gonna just double down on what you said, and just add this briefly, and I'll pass it to you, Frank. Is that like those connections? If you look back historically, prior to the Civil War taking place, right? Africans, at least those Africans who were not legally enslaved, because under colonialism they still was marginalized, and colonialism is a form of slavery. But those quote unquote free Africans in America were looking to develop relationships with those Africans in the Caribbean, those on the continent, and Canada, and they were setting up those networks. And if you look back at those readings, you can see even in the conventions they were talking about developing economic relationships with the people of Jamaica, the people of Haiti, the people of Africa, right? They were actually like planning these things because, of course, they weren't able to set up these economic relationships with the people of Europe, or not even with the Europeans on the same land that they were occupying, right? At least any type of fair relationship, economic relationship. So I think it's important to look at that history, because that is a history that usually gets brushed under the rug, right? And the other part, because you mentioned this, I think is important, is that we sort of got duped into establishing this relationship as quote unquote American citizens, right, with Europeans. And look how that turned out, right? If we would have just like went the other way and continued to develop relationships with the other African people, and the reason why we wanted to develop those relationships, because we understood that we were one and the same. We understood that we were struggling against the same oppressor and exploiter. And so, we were more conscious of what was taking place, more conscious of colonialism and imperialism then than we are today as a people. But it is due to the manipulation, the miseducation, the indoctrination of the colonizers. So, you know, it's not completely our fault, but our liberation is on us, though. You know, we have to be able to have these platforms, have these discussions, and give this information, as much information to our people to battle against the colonial machine. Frank, I'm gonna give you the last word.
Yeah, you know, Chairman Omari was just reminding us, you know, about this piece he wrote here, telling us to look back in history, right? And like we've been saying, look in history and then look at current event and compare them and see. So he was just telling us here, and, you know, just because you read a book and what you read in a book, you are not seeing those exact things happening, does not mean it is not happening. It is happening, but just in different form. And that is why he even talked about chattel slavery. So chattel slavery was different, you know, from slavery, you know, that happened. So they all of them have like their different way of application. You know, the colonizer just how they call it, have a way of making it very sophisticated for you to not understand. So in another way too, he was actually trying to tell us during those times, right? Black people work, African people work, they did not get paid. As compared to today, we are getting some pay. But does that mean we are not staying in slavery? We are not in some form of slavery? We are. So he's just telling us to compare things and see how things are being run and who are running it. Okay, who are carrying on the narrative, because Black people are not still yet, you know, carry on their narrative. If Black man read a book here, it have to be approved by the New York Times magazine or the New York Times or the Days. And who control those things? Okay, if a Black man want to produce a movie to Hollywood, it have to be approved by the same system. Okay, if a Black man write a music, okay, it have to be approved by the same system on how you should portray your music, how the video should be, or how Black people should dress. Black people shouldn't dress nice. They should dress with their booty outside and all of those things. Okay, if there's a white person in that video, okay, the white person going to dress nice, or the white female going to dress nice, and the white female is not going to dance certain way, but the Black female is going to dance certain way to portray how, you know, society look like, you know, society describe people differently. So Chairman O'Malley is just telling all these things that, look, slavery is still going on, okay? Colonization is still going on. It is just being sophisticated in a very different way. Now, we see it, right? As a Black figure, if you are leaving the media where you are reached to a stage where you are now about to retire, right? What happened? They come after you, put some kind of false crime on you, and take you to jail, okay? And then spoil your reputation, and then spend all your money back to the colonizer. The money go back to the colonizer. They freeze your account. Is that, I mean, it's even happening to African leaders on the African continent. Those that take that money and come and bank it in European bank, the moment you began to disagree with the colonizer, what happened? They freeze your account because they let you know your money, your saving, okay, your whole life is in the Bank of America, is in the Bank of, how do you call it? The Barclays Bank is in Wachovia, and is in the Swiss Bank, okay? They make you afraid to the extent the tactics or the belief you have for your people, you will never take that belief because you don't want for your money to be frozen. So Chairman O'Malley is just telling us these things that are happening is still colonization, it's still slavery, it's still, how they call it, oppression, because we cannot function on our own. We have to function and do things according to how people want it, according to the narrative of people, according to how people have perceived us. Okay, so he's letting us know that these things are still happening. And in order to get away with these things, okay, we have to go by in terms of history. We have to read Black scholars' book and compare the narrative of today, and we will understand how things are being run and how things is being run and who it is being run by.
All right. I got sidetracked just real quick, but appreciate that. Appreciate everybody for tuning in too. My people who are just joining us as well. Make sure y'all go back and listen to it. We had a powerful discussion today, speaking about some of the things that are happening on the continent, from occupied Tanzania to Niger. And if you want to hear more about our analysis on Niger, make sure you tune in tomorrow at 2:00. As Frank gonna go in, he gave us, if y'all got in late, y'all missed it because he went in earlier. So we just got finished reading Stolen Black Labor. We're going to continue with the book next time we get together. I want to appreciate y'all all for joining us. Make sure y'all tune in Tuesdays and Thursdays at 12 p.m. For our Black August edition. We have the Black August Power Hour going on every Tuesday and Thursday for the whole month at 12 p.m. And it's a powerful discussion. We got various organizers that joins us on that day to discuss Malcolm X's speeches and its relation, or how it's relative today. You'll be amazed. Some of us probably wouldn't, but you'll be amazed of how similar the situation or conditions of that time hasn't changed. So again, appreciate everybody for tuning in. Until next time. Peace,
so
Black Power.
Sorry,
Oh,
I
go
think
ahead.
I think we need to check our notification section, because if it happened to Nkrumah, then it might also be happening to other people, because
what happened?
He didn't get a notification.
Oh, I peeped the replay. He didn't get it. I did. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll look into that. I don't know why. Yeah, I'll look into that. But again, appreciate everybody. Continue to organize, continue to get involved, because that's the only way we can get free. We are our own liberators, as Baba Jalil Mutakin told us. All right. Power to the people. And y'all hold on.